afternoon. Some of you would be familiar with this request from the last time it came before City Council, which was at a public hearing a little over a year ago in January of 2012. At that time, as was explained in your committee report, the item was tabled by City Council in order to allow opportunities for other agencies, specifically ECUA, who expressed concerns during the course of the public hearing, to have more time to provide input.
This was held up before primarily. One of the reasons was because we wanted ECUA to weigh in. Have they weighed in on this?
We did meet with them, and I had some email communication back and forth, and the last communication I had stated that in speaking with their board and their advisory committees, that they did not feel that, while they understood our desire to put this in place, there was not a specific suggested change they could make that they felt would make it acceptable to them. So there was no specific language they suggested at the time. I did speak with Tim Haig with ECUA last week, and he said that since we were bringing this back up as a discussion item with no action being proposed at this time, that their lawyers may be able to provide some suggested language or specific comments geared towards the amendment, but we have not received that up until this point.
Okay. Yeah, because the way you state that makes it sound like they really don't like it and they can't figure out how to make it so they will like it. So yeah. Hopefully they'll get another chance to weigh in. I understand it's just a discussion item, but I appreciate you answering my questions. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Councilor.
I'd be okay with it. I mean, I understand the intent, but I think that I would like to see reduced restrictions, maybe some overview of it, but oversight. But I think that I have some concerns about the high level of restrictions on the property, and I know Councilman Baer was asking about ECUA, and Ms. Morris mentioned that ECUA's attorney might have, and he is here if you want to get his feedback. Thanks.
Go ahead.
I'm Bradley Odom. As many of you know, I serve as general counsel to ECUA, and I appreciate many of the comments that I've heard. ECUA sent me here today because, quite simply, they're very concerned by these changes to the Land Development Code, or LDC. And their objection is quite simple. It will devalue ECUA's Main Street wastewater treatment plant property. You don't have to, that's not some theory of mine, it's not some theory of staff's, but since ECUA has put up those for sale signs that I'm sure you've noticed, it's gotten a lot of inquiries from developers. And what ECUA hears over and over and over again is, well, those proposed changes to the LDC concern us. We may not be interested in this property depending on what the city does regarding this. And I would submit to you that no one in the city benefits, neither ECUA nor the city council nor anyone else, from having land sit dormant for an extended period of time while you find someone who decides that, number one, they want to work within these parameters, decides how much it devalues the property from a traditional property evaluation standard, and then goes to the considerable expense of trying to design the way they intend to use this property to fit within the various restrictions that, quite frankly, the city property isn't going to be affected by, but ECUA's is. Whenever you look at this, item, it is very clear that it seems to be targeting ECUA's property. You see it mentioned on the first page. You see that on the second to last substantive page, the paragraph that Mr. Baer was referring to earlier, you see it mentioned ECUA again. But then it goes further, and it talks about really what the city's goal is behind this LDC. And what the stated goal is the addition of over 1,500 residential units on this property. Now, whenever that's your stated goal, and then you start looking at the restrictions, you see that it is really trying to dictate that outcome. That's why you have restrictions in there like an entrance and opening every 150 feet. Why would you do that? There are many uses that could be aesthetically pleasing that wouldn't require an opening every 150 feet. But it's being done in order to say, yeah, it's open for everything. But really what we're trying to do is develop over 1,500 residential units on this property. Now, that may be the city's view of what the highest and best use of that property is. I'm not here today to debate the wisdom of having another 1,500 residential units in what many would say is already a residential glut of the market at the present time. I'm not here today to sit there and clamor about the certain legal concerns that there are. We can argue about those later if necessary. But plain and simply, whenever you have an LDC, you're trying to dictate a residential use, and you come up with these things that you say are aesthetic, but really they're driving what the use is, and it devalues ECUA's property, that's bad for everyone in Pensacola. Residents of Pensacola and ECUA ratepayers are one and the same. And to sit here and devalue an asset that is here within the city that may cause it to sit dormant for an extended period of time, I would submit to you is not good. It's not good government. Now, I know that even the presentation of this, before you today came as a surprise to ECUA. No one has mentioned this for months and months and months. In fact, the last communication that was had with the city is, we're not going to be messing with the LDC. We're going to wait until after it's conveyed, then we can work with the developer and see what we need to do. But then, in the middle of last week or so, ECUA finds out for the first time that, hey, we're going to bring this back up again. And yeah, we haven't talked about it in months, but now we feel like it's time to move. And we feel like that is a very bad precedent, but it's also bad government to sit here and devalue ECUA's property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Myers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir, for your comments. We get surprised a lot on the council, so welcome to our world. I'm kind of concerned as to how we're able to have discussion on an item that was tabled and how this can just come back on our agenda if we tabled it, it was not removed from the table. So I think this is completely inappropriate discussion to be having unless this is substantively different than what we previously considered.
Councilman Bear, it's not what we have here is something that the existing council hadn't seen before, and before we rescheduled the tabled public hearing, we just wanted to make you aware of it and answer any questions you may have. It would still require the continuation and a rescheduling of the public hearing at a future meeting in order to actually take any action on this. We just wanted, because it had been so long, to give everyone a refresher and to go ahead and introduce this to council members who may not have been on council when it was discussed a year ago.
Okay, thank you.
Forward. I want the staff to be able to do something here, and whether or not we schedule a public hearing or whether or not just to go back and make a contact with ECUA again to see if there are some things on there. So I would like to make a motion that we schedule that you consider scheduling the public hearing for this issue. So, yeah.
Can I discuss now, sir? So perhaps she can weigh in on this. Is some level of with this public hearing, I'm hoping that it can take on more of a workshop quality. I'm not sure that the public hearing can, and that's my goal. For instance, I'm just thinking back to a city I visited in Sweden, what the development possibilities are there. So I just am asking, I'm curious, I don't want the public hearing to forfeit the opportunity for what I just described as, for instance, what Malmo was able to do through some level of sort of a summit. And so I'm not saying I don't support it.
If from the letter that was read, if ECUA comes back, the letter stated that they didn't want any changes. So if we don't do something, we'll be talking about this conversation next April, and we have not. So, I don't have a problem with withdrawing and saying a workshop, but the workshop we're given whatever what we're looking for is in there. I don't have a problem with that. It's just that I want the collaboration between the ECUA, the city of Pensacola, and of course, all of the other stakeholders that's involved in there. And the public hearing allows for all of the other stakeholders to come in and put their input to it as well. So,
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Councilwoman.
I'm confused about the motion. I think I certainly would not support having a public hearing on this. I think this project is too important, and as Councilman Spencer said, this is going to be here for 100 years or longer, way after we're gone, and it's very important that we get it right, and it is something that I think what you're really getting at, you want the public to be able to weigh in on this. I like the idea of having a workshop to have more of a collaborative effort so that everybody will feel comfortable and like what we come up with. So I don't know how to phrase it to get where Councilman Spencer is trying to go with the public workshop idea, but I would like to make maybe a friendly amendment that instead of calling it a public hearing, that we have a public workshop on this matter and try to bring in the public and some experts and before we vote on a final plan. Will you accept that friendly amendment?
I accept that.
Now, are you including ECUA in your
Yes.
group?
Any stakeholder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have now amendments. So what we have to do is vote on the amendment before we move forward.
I accept it as a friendly amendment, yes.
Good, okay. Okay, anybody else? Council.
I was just going to say I support it now. Now it's going to be a workshop. Thanks.
I saw the hand for the ECUA attorney earlier, and I was getting to council members. Would you still like to speak?
I was going to disagree with some of the things that were said, but I think that if we're sending it, or if your recommendation is that you send it to a workshop in which ECUA can sit down with staff and try to hash out with other stakeholders, I think that's fine. I think that there were some discussions that are not being referred to that are also germane, but I don't think we need to get into a who struck John sort of argument if we're going to go to a workshop and try to come up with something. I think that supports what ECUA, other stakeholders, and the city, maybe we can all get on board on the same vision.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Mr. Holmes, did you have something, sir?
One brief comment. So restricting its uses, we are not opposed to that. But I think the restrictions as they are currently put on the table are restrictive to the point that it's damaging to the property values at the current time. So that's what I think this is great. We got dialogue going, and please, I'm in favor of seeing that pushed through.
Well stated, Mr. Holmes. I think you're absolutely correct. I think we're at the point where folks are willing to listen to what each other has to say. I think in the long run, we all have the same mutual interest at heart, And I commend the Vice President for her excellent suggestion and Councilwoman Myers for her amendment. With that, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.